11. There we go. And when we were in Jerusalem, we came up on, there was a place I wanted to go to. It was called Ein Karen. And it's a very, plush spot in Jerusalem. And, David and Brad were like, why are we going there? I said, I just want to go there and see it. So we went down there. We didn't even know where we were. But we get down there and it's like, okay, there's like 2 Russian churches here, and there's a Greek church, and then there's this big Catholic church, and there's this French church, a French monastery, and a Greek monastery, and a French convent, and a Russian convent. In this town. We're talking a little tiny place, And I said, well, this is very interesting. Well, we went up to the church, and it was the Church of John the Baptist. We later found out this was where John the Baptist was alleged to have been born. So there's a church there for him. So we went inside and walking along. Well, they had the passage describing the birth of John the Baptist in 55 languages on big marble sheets all across the wall. So it was just boom, 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 boom. And we're going along, and we looked at this passage in the Gospel of Luke, and we're seeing this Aleph Tav marked all over there. And of course, Brad goes nuts. Look at that. Look at that. So we decided, well, we better take a look at the New Testament and see with the Hebrew translations where the Aleph Tavs are. So we did. And that's when we decided, okay, we're going to incorporate the Aleph Tav in the text. And so there were 2 things that happened: transliteration of the name, including the Aleph Tav. And so when this happened, well, guess what? When you transliterate the names, you find the rest of the story. And as we're looking at this transliteration, we come upon this Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Well, how's that pronounced? Well, I don't know. What do you think? We start studying it. And some people were saying Yahweh, but Strong's told me it was Jehovah. I looked at it and went, that ain't right. And so we made another trip for further research to determine what the usage was in Hebrew language in Israel. So the following year we go. This was the year that the Separate Company was born. And Stephen and I were there. And we were there with the 4 families that created the Separate Publishing Group. We're all there. And we go up to the Galilee, and we're having this argument. We wonder how this works. And the woman at the store there, where they have the I don't know, has anybody been to Israel here? Okay, there we go. Let me show you. On this trip, we decided we were going to go to the upper room, the so-called upper room. And everything in Israel has at least 3 locations. The tomb, that's got 3 locations. Mount of Olives, that's got 3 locations. The temple, it's got 3 locations. So we go to the upper room, and Penny and I walked in there. And we walk in, and there's a group singing. Well, we didn't know what they were singing, but they were singing in Afrikaans.
Wow.
And so I'm like, okay, I can't tell that language. It sounds a bit Dutch. I'm not quite sure what it is. And so we didn't say anything. And then they broke into How Great Thou Art. And Penny and I started singing. We started singing in English. When they realized we were speaking English, they switched over to English. In the meantime, we haven't said anything. So I looked at them and I said, well, would you guys like to learn a song in Hebrew? And they said, yeah, we would. And so I taught them the song in Hebrew. And we began to sing together. And we didn't sing together from that point forward. We singing together. And we sang like 5 songs together in the upper room. And then we parted our ways and we went. And anyway, so we get up to the Galilee, and we're having this argument in the store. Well, what do you think is pronounced? Well, I don't know. Blah, blah, blah. But we saw this, we saw that. And the shop gal says, oh, you need to wait for Carol. Carol? Yeah, Carol. Wait till Carol gets here. So we're standing around waiting. Where's Carol? Where's Carol? And we never find a couple of extra dollars, a couple of pairs of seat, maybe a telly, whatever they had in the shop. And then Carol finally shows up. And we said, Carol, we're having a bit of a debate. We want your assistance. Now, who are you? And she says, well, I'm Iroquois. She was an Iroquois native, that's a Native American tribe, from Quebec, Canada. And she said, I came over here with a group of Iroquois, and we went into Jerusalem, and we were singing ancient Iroquois songs. And the rabbis came up and said, you can't sing. You have to be quiet. What are you talking about? Well, you're singing in Hebrew, and you can't say that name. What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, you guys are singing in Hebrew. We're singing in Iroquois. They didn't know that the Iroquois language was Hebrew. Now, tomorrow we're going to explore this a lot more because I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the migration of the tribes of the house of Yasharel. And we're going to be looking at the maps in the back of the separate. We're going to go into that in a great amount of detail and discussing all the migration routes and who they were. And anyway, so she says, this is how it's pronounced. And she takes out this blue pen and she writes it right on the palm of my hand. It's like this and like this. Got it? So she became known as Carol of Galilee.
Oh, wow.
But then we proceeded to verify it. And as we verified it, we were like, yeah, she's right. Yeah, she's right. She's right. She's right. She's right. And so at this point, we decided, okay, look. And of course, we were still trying to publish books, but where we were publishing books was the worst publishing house in the United States. So we would order like 4 books, and they would come, and they were like perfect bound, so they were just glued. You know, you're talking a huge book this thick, 8.5 by 11, glued with a glued binding. So you got 3 reads before the binding started breaking up. And usually they'd send 4 books, and one would have the cover upside down. So, you know, it was like, okay, this thing is just ridiculous. So we went by name and then cover, and then name by cover, name by cover. Finally, we decided, okay, we're going to go with this cover in black, and we're calling it the Kodesh Sephiri. And so I published like 3 of those books, and one of them is mine. So I get invited out to teach out in Spokane. Well, by the time I get there, this book was just broken up in shambles. You know? And the sound in there is, I'm buying that book. I said, you can't buy that book, that's my book. No, I'm buying that book. Sell me that book right here. I'm not going to let you leave until you sell me that book. Okay, fine. And so I gave it to him at my cost. And I think he still has it. Kendrick, and he was in Navajo, another Native American tribe, Navajo. And anyway, so I ordered another group of books. We decided to call it the Hebrew Scriptures, I think is what it was called. And I'm telling you, I could not get those books to my office. I couldn't get home with the books. I'd take them out of the box. I'm buying that. So we had none of those books. Some people were just buying it away from us. And I said, okay, well, we got to do something here. So we get to Israel, and we had this conversation. We were at Sukkot. We had our own sukkah, which was actually a bed and breakfast and had a large patio on the back. That was our sukkah. And we were there for Sukkot. And during that period of time, we decided, okay, we're going to take every penny we have, and we're going to order 2,000 copies. And then we're just going to pray that we're going to be able to order more after that. And that's how the separate was born. And we found out by a guy, one of the books that had the cover upside down. I said, well, look, I want to give this book to my nephew. And I'm not going to send it to him with this cheesy cover or with this cheesy binding. Well, so somebody said, well, take it downtown to this place. And this guy does rebinding, and he'll put a leather cover on. I said, oh, fantastic. You know, so I go downtown. They charged me $200 to rebind it, the leather cover. And he looks at the book and he goes, who found this thing? And he was just disgusted. You know. I'm like, look, this is the only people we know. So come on. Because I'll tell you where you can get it done. So he gave us the name of this company in Michigan. And so the next thing you know, we meet these people. They come up and say, we can do that book. How can we do the book? Well, because we were publishing all the memoirs of Mark Twain, and so we bought a special binder that could bind a 3-inch book. And so you use this paper, and we got this binder, and then we can publish your book. We couldn't publish it last year, but we can publish it now. And by the way, they cannot publish that edition right now. They can't do it anymore. So there was just this little window that opened up long enough for them to publish the book. And so we published edition number 1. And we're just praying, okay, please let us sell these books, and we can order another set. You know. And then, of course, as soon as we put a price tag on a book, people write us. Freely you have been given, freely you shall give. You know, freely you have received. We're like, well, you know, if we do that, then we will not be publishing another book, period. Yeah. So we've made the decision, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to carefully steward our resources that Yah has given us to be able to continue to publish. It was 18 months before we sold through that edition. And only in the last 6 of that did we raise enough money to print the next printing. And so Yah blesses us and continues to bless us to allow us to print. Now, last year, we had a massive price increase from this company. And they came back, they hit us with a 35% price increase. And we're going, well, that's going to make it pretty difficult. So David and I sat down and we thought, said, okay, well, if we buy a super volume, super number of books, we can maintain the same price point. But it took every last penny we could scrap together to sell that, get this, do this, blah, blah. So we did all that so we could get enough money to be able to pay for a large print volume to get the volume discount. And that's what we have going in the separate millennium. Now, one thing Chris has over here that I'm going to show you. You can see this book is a little bit fatter than the other separate millennium. And the reason this is because this is a large print edition. Now, this is actually smaller than the first edition of the Sefer. But remember, I told you our printer in America could no longer do this. So I went to Britain on behalf of I was teaching on the tribes, and this fellow named Shane Stokes contacts me. He says, Dr. Pete, you need to come over here. I'm like, what? You know, Stephanie's like, what? You know? And yeah, you need to come over here. You need to get over here right now, and we'll show you the stuff you need to know. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll get over there. There'll come a day, I'll get there. We'll see. Anyway, he kept pestering me. The next thing I know, Elaine says, oh, you're staying at my house. We're all going to meet on such and such a day. 2 weeks later, right? So I buy this plane ticket, and I fly into, not Heathrow, but Gatwick. And I fly into Gatwick, and I catch the train out to Wales. I mean, I've never been out there. You know, I didn't know how to catch a train. I didn't know if you could eat food on the train. You know, I mean, nothing, man. And I catch the train out there, and it's like, I sure hope there's people here to meet me, because, you know, here I am. I've never met these people before. You know, a couple of emails, that's it. And so I got the wrong door of the train station. I'm standing out the back. And finally I hear this, Dr. P. And I turned around and it's Shane Stokes. And so we got together and started talking. And then he took me to this tour. We went to this tour of Wales. And I'm getting initiated to the truth about the faith in the first century and how it was birthed. At least the initial truth. And so the next thing you know, we're at the grave of Joseph of Arimathea on the island of Avalon, now in Glenmorgan, the Church of St. Eliud. And I'm seeing some things that are just stunning. Well, in the meantime, I'm saying, I wonder if there's a book printer here. You ever heard the story before, Chris? I wonder if there's a book printer here that maybe could do our large edition. And so I called this company, and they're on the other side of England. And I said, okay, well, maybe we can make an appointment and I can try to get out there. And so 3 days before I'm getting ready to leave, I call up Neil. I said, Neil, it's not going to happen. There's no way I can catch the train out there. It's like 12 hours. I'm not going to get there till midnight. You're not working, and I have to be on the plane the following morning. He says, oh, no problem. I'll meet you in downtown Cardiff tomorrow at noon. He drives all the way over there. And we go to lunch. He's like, yeah, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this, we can do that. And I said, okay, fantastic. You guys can print the book we want. So, of course, I passed them to the Max. I said, okay, guys, here's what we want you to do. We want you to do our collector's edition. Massive, you need a pallet jack to get it home, big, fat thing. There was no way that could be printed in the States, no possible way. But they did it. And so the next thing you know, I said, okay, well, we're going to try to reduce that book to a 7x10 size. But what that means is it's going to fatten up. And so there it is, the large print, which printed at CPI in Britain. And to this day, they're still the only ones that do it, unless we find another printer somewhere else, like maybe in Cape Town. But so anyway, we've gotten to the point now where it's really been an interesting juggle. I learned that when we first started this journey, I knew nothing about printing. You know, like for instance, this book is Smythe Sewn. Most of the books you buy are what they call perfect bound. They take the book and then they'll take the book and they get it all ready to go. And they take the edge of it and they dip it in glue and they put a little nylon back on it. And then they wrap the cardboard around that cover, and that's your softbound book. Right? And you know, if you read the softbound 2, 3 times, 4 times, pages start coming out. Mm-hmm. Or it breaks, you know, the cover of the back of it breaks. Well, you can't have it in the Bible because we wouldn't be reading the Bible all the time. So you have to have something that's going to hold up, something that's going to last, something, you know, that the back is going to break. And so we wanted to get the absolutely the top quality we could. Now, another problem that you don't know about with a lot of Bibles, we saw this in the Christian bookstore yesterday. Oh, this has got a leather cover on it. And then you find out the leather they're talking about is pigskin. But they don't tell you that. That's leather. Except, whoop, it's pigskin. Yeah, it's a bit of a problem for us. So we had to verify that our cover was cow leather and not pig leather. And then this paper, man, did we have to fight over the paper. We need this kind of paper. We need it this kind of way. We don't have that. And finally, after 4 years, we finally found the perfect paper. Literary opaque at 35 pounds. And so we're just, you know, and the guys who had this paper made, they were publishing historical books. And they had a major collection of historical books. And they said, yeah, we'll give permission for you to also use our paper. So we had the ultimate paper, literary opaque, humorous cats, you know. And then the next thing you know, we're not making that anymore. Why? Because the Chinese came in and bought all the pulp in the United States, and 90% of the paper manufacturers went out of business in 1 year. Yeah. So now we're, and so these are the kinds of things that we juggle to get a high quality paper, and in order to get a high quality text. Now, I mentioned this to people yesterday as we talked about the Millennium Edition. What are the fundamental differences? The main difference is, I discovered the hard way, that when you have a word in all caps, with capital B, capital R, you know, well, if you do that, that's not a capitalized word. That's a symbologized word. It's not capitalized. A capitalized word has the first letter in caps and the rest in lowercase. That's a capitalized word. When it's all caps, that's symbologized, and it's called dog Latin. And you know, so I'm looking at our text and I'm thinking, okay, well, the traditional way of doing the Bible is to have the big number at the beginning of the paragraph and then have the first word in all caps and bold, you know. But how does it read if you were to read it out loud? You know, if you were the AI bot reading it. And you're going along and you're saying, okay, and I comfort your hearts and establish you in every good word and word. Paragraph 3, therefore, brethren, pray for us at the word. I mean, that's what's going on, right? That's what's happening. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking, why is "and" in all block caps, but the name of Yah is only capitalized at the first word, first letter? What is "and" so important, or is our paragraph so important? That's ridiculous, right? I said, okay, well, we're not doing that anymore. So one of the big changes we did is we went to a much more comfortable font. We took down the all cap bold out of the book entirely. So now when you read the text, it's like, yeah. And of course, when you're putting together a text like this, it's all about landmarks. Where am I? Hey, can we take a look at your book, Steve? Yeah, sure. There's no Gospel of John in here. I had a guy read me 2 weeks ago. I want my money back. I said, what's the problem? You guys omitted the Gospel of John. What kind of heretics are you? You people are blaspheming dogs who have erased the New Testament. I said, hey, check the back of the New Testament. You'll find it. There was a gal here in South Africa. She writes us. Well, I went to 1 Kings 5 and found out that you guys have completely omitted 8 sentences. So I ripped that out of the book and burned it. And I said, and I wrote it back and I said, well, we actually just renumbered chapter 4 and chapter 5 to comport with Tanakh numbering for purposes of the Torah portion. All the verses are still there. They're just numbered in accordance with the Tanakh and not in accordance with the usual English scripture. But here you are, and you're going, wow, what's going on here? Where am I? Where are these books that I used to know? I had the whole order of the Bible memorized, and you guys got it all weird. What happened here? What's going on here? Well, because of that, we try to put in as many road marks and landmarks as we can. Well, here, look up here, you see. And so on every page, you see the common name, but you also see the transliterated name. So it's there to give you the road mark to find where you are, right? Plus, we have a table of contents. And for those of you who don't like the table of contents, you can get the edition with the tabs. Now, don't try this at home. Installing your own tabs. I've been at conferences where I sat there for 8 hours installing tabs for people. Because you come in and say, I'll put those tabs on. I saw one guy, he handed me his book, and he still had his big mechanics grease spots on his tabs where he was putting it on there. They were sideways, crooked, and 2 or 3 pages tabbed together. That ain't gonna work. That's not gonna work, right? So, anyway, we have copies available with tabs too. But you will come to learn, like my book doesn't have any tabs because I know where everything is. Why? Because I've edited this book 18 times. That's 1.4 million words going, Then I get an email. Oh, you're going to put a comma there? Really? That's totally inappropriate. And of course, but we take all constructive criticism. I've had long debates with people. That passage needs to be this way. What makes you think so? Blah, 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 blah. Great scholars, really great scholars. And we'd have a long discussion. I'd think about it. You're right. And then the change that we made, So, all right. So that's enough introductory remarks about the Sefer. That's where we are with the Sefer in the Millennium Edition. Eventually, it's not going to say Millennium Edition at all. It's just going to say Sefer. That's it. There won't be anything else on it. First, second, third, none of that. It'll just say Sefer. And hopefully that's going to be soon. And hopefully we're going to be able to get. Hopefully, look, I'll tell you the truth, guys. In the United States right now, the train is coming off the rails. That's what's going on. It's just coming off the rails. And I'm going to tell you why today that's happening. But it really is coming off the rails. And I love the fact that South Africa is one of the founding members of the BRICS, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, an economic schema, right? That was an alternative system to the SWIFT system, the US dollar. And now, because of the abuses that America has done with the dollar, well, we think that you should allow the CIA in there to have a correct transition of your election. Oh, you think so? We don't want to do that. Oh, but we're going to hit you with economic sanctions, right? Well, a lot of countries, like Argentina, got hit with massive sanctions because they wouldn't allow the CIA to rig your election. They're mad about that. A lot of countries are mad about that. And they're going, you know what? The dollar is supposed to be completely neutral. That's what makes a dollar valuable. That's what makes any currency valuable. It's completely neutral. You know what scriptures say? Don't shave off that. They get the shekel of the sanctuary. Yeah, that's the shekel. I figure if I scrape a little bit off the edge of every coin that comes through here, in 2 days I'll have another ounce. And every 6 days I'll have 3 ounces. And so just gotta ignore this, right? Well, Scripture time. Scripture says that's putting your thumb on the scale and cheating people, right? But the American currency do that all the time. Okay, we're gonna here's Saudi Arabia. We're gonna loan you $5 trillion. Thank you, Saudi Arabia. Okay, it's time to pay us back. Okay, we're gonna do that just as soon as we devalue our dollar by 50%. You're gonna get $5 trillion back. The buying power is only gonna be $1 trillion, but at least you're gonna get the same number back, right? Well, anyway, this whole chicken has come home to roost in the States. And so now there's a real panic starting to set because they're expecting some 200 banks to fail. The level of the bailout, the kind of bailout that's going to be needed to keep the banks from failing, you know what the number is? $11 trillion. Now, if they print $11 trillion, what country is going to buy that debt? None of them. So you print 11 trillion, and then what happens? Your money goes to Zimbabwe. What way does it go? It goes to Zimbabwe. And next thing you know, you're paying $5 trillion for a cup of coffee. Right? It's our way or the Zimbabwe. That's what they keep telling us. And so, the common features that we see all over America, like McDonald's, Burger King, Walmart, these kinds of things. At Walmart, I mean, come on, guys. I'm telling you, people dress down to go to Walmart. People dress up to go to church, When it comes time to go to Walmart, find me that pair of sweats that's got a hole. I'm going to wear those shoes. The stuff that you'd never wear anywhere. Well, I'm going to Walmart. I got to get ready. It's just unbelievable, But now Walmart is like laying off people right and left. Amazon laid off 27,000 people. But, the ones I like to hear the layoffs is Facebook. Oh, yeah. Lay off those fact checkers who, by the way, were being paid by Pfizer. Oh, yeah, that got leaked out. As soon as they get laid off, I'm having a party over at my house. We're going to have a barbecue. And but this is what you see, right? And so all these tech companies are having massive layoffs. Big shop stores are laying off. McDonald's is talking about bankruptcy. They closed their corporate offices last week. Burger King is closing hundreds and hundreds of stores. Hey, I don't eat at Burger King. I mean, come on, you go there. What is it? We got the bacon cheeseburger, the bacon salad, the bacon cheese, and you can get extra bacon. Do you have anything about bacon? No. Have it your way with bacon. And when Burger King opened, they had the Whopper, right? You go there and they had a hamburger this big, right? Okay, this is competitive. That's a hamburger, right? The Whopper. Now the Whopper is this big, right? This is a Whopper. Yeah, it's a Whopper of a tail that you're trying to call that a Whopper, right? And they're the most horrible. So anyway, but people who are on the lower income scale eat at McDonald's and they eat at Burger King. That's where they eat, And all these things are going away. Target is closing 1,000 stores. On and on and on it goes. So we're seeing this stuff just, and what is the word on the street in the States? The dollar is going to go to zero. JP Morgan came out and said, expect the stock market crash. Get your money out now. And of course, the word is get your money out of everything. Get your money out of the bank, buy gold, if you can get it, if you can. And so it's coming off the rails in the States, and when it gets completely off the rails, unless something miraculous happens, civil war is coming. Now, there's a reason why that's happening. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to identify the Antichrist. Okay. Now, I'm going to give my fair warning. Okay. This is going to be some difficult stuff. And some of this stuff may upset you and may put you ill at ease. But I got to tell it to you anyway. So we have this group on Telegram. It's called the Ark. And I've got there's 4 people or 5 people on the Ark that are doing nonstop research all the time. So one of the things that came up was a discussion about Watson and Crick. Now, Watson and Crick in 1953 identified something. And the thing they identified was what? Two-strand DNA. This is called the double helix. Okay? This is what they identified. Now, many biblical scholars believe that this is Jacob's ladder. This is what Jacob saw when he went to sleep, and he saw angels ascending and descending. Because what we know about this double helix is one strand descends and the other ascends. Now, it was discussed and has been discussed by several commentators that Watson and Crick identified the number of genes on each helix as 72,000. And people are going, well, you can't substantiate that now because all of this work that they substantiated has been completely repressed in the press. But I was looking at our group today. We found other studies corroborating 72,000 genes in each helix. Well, that's kind of interesting. In fact, that's real interesting. So, when you go to the Jehovah's Witnesses Kingdom Hall, where I have been occasionally, on rare occasion, like after they've been at my house 35 times. Not 3 times. Okay, hey, it's the JWs. I had the second highest in command for the JWs come to my house. And I said, it's good to talk to you. He said, why is that? I said, because you have the name wrong. Come on in, let's talk. and so we did. And eventually he said, oh. And then I heard that I visited him in Washington many times. And I heard he'd gone to Alaska and he was talking to some people and trying to evangelize the JW Church. And he was using Yahweh. Hallelujah. Yeah. Okay. Now, let's see. Let's look upon this. This is in the book of Chazon, or you might call it Revelation. And in this book, let me see if I can find it again. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay. Okay, and the seas, 24 elders, lightnings and thundering, the throne was a sea of glass like a crystal, and the 4 living creatures had 6 wings. Oh yeah, the seraphim. They had 6 wings. Now, when you read Strong's Concordance, they tell you that's a fiery serpent. And yet, John the Revelator sees them, Isaiah sees them, and Ezekiel sees them. And funny thing, they all had 6 wings. And then there were 4 faces of it: the lion, the man, the lamb, and the ox. Right? Okay, let me see. Oh, here we go. Chapter 7. After these things, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea or any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living Elohim, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea. By the way, that 4 corners is that the Euphrates that just dried up, where they found all kinds of tunnels under the river. And when they went to the doors of those tunnels, we heard screaming and howling, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the river, the sea, till we have sealed the servants of our Elohim in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Yasharah. And I heard the number of them that were sealed. Now, when we read this in our myopic Greek mindset, we say, well, that means 144,000 were sealed. No, we heard the number of those. Of those that were sealed, they had a number. And what was that number? 144,000. Well, isn't that interesting? Because, of course, 72,000 and 72,000 is 144,000. Enter, if you will, Molech. You guys remember Molech? I'm glad you guys are all scriptural students. I don't have to go back over this stuff. Okay, Molech. Let's put him up here. Molech. Little m. We're not going to capitalize his name. Little Molech. And he comes in with what? RNA. Now, mRNA is called messenger RNA. Messenger in Hebrew is malach, which is spelled the same as Molech. Messenger, Molech's RNA. Now, in order for this RNA to function, guess what it needs? 72,000 genes. So let's put this in here. Wait a minute, Stephen. That looks an awful lot like that lighting ceremony that Queen Elizabeth did in front of Windsor Palace on the anniversary of her 70th reign as queen. That looks a lot like that lighting ceremony. What are you trying to say? Well, let's put the 72,000 in. Okay. Okay, class, math time. 3 times 72,000. 216,000. That's the number of genes when you have the mRNA added to the double helix. Okay. Well, good. Thanks for that addition, Steve. Thanks for that. Thanks for that illumination. We have everything covered except that one part. Revelation 13. Okay. Let's see what I'm going to do. One page at a time. Here's wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate. Now, does that mean identify? No, it means calculate. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. For it's the number of man. Now, what did we say was the number of man before? 144,000. Double helix DNA, mankind, 144,000. This is going to be the number when it's calculated. You're going to see that this is the number of man, and this number is 660 and 6. Now, you know, you get the modern editions, right? The 20th century editions. And his number is 666. Oh, Ronald Wilson Reagan. No. It's 660 and 6. So if you're going to try to assign it to a name, find somebody who's got the first name that's got 600 letters. Right? Okay. 600, let's put this up here on the board so you can have fun with this. And I can make trouble with the whiteboard, right? 600 times 60. 0, 0, and 36. And let's multiply that times 6. Why are we multiplying? Because we're calculating. We're calculating. Okay, let's multiply that. Okay, let's see. 0, 0, 0, 6 times 6, 36, carry the 3. 6 times 3, 18 plus 3. $216,000. Now, we can kind of see that, gee, this book seems to be about genetics. What would give us our clue that the Bible's about genetics? What does the first book go by? Genes is. We say a Genesis. Well, what's Genesis? You know the proper pronunciation. We're from Cambridge. It's Genesis. Genes is how they say it in Tennessee. Genes is. Hey, it's about the genes, right? And when you read the Torah portion, the first Torah portion that comes out of Genesis, out of Reshit, is called Torah, which is what? Generations. Gene-ration. Gene-ration. Here's the ration of the genes. Here's how we ration the genes from this guy to his son, to his grandson, to his great-grandson, to his great-great-grandson. We ration the genes for that. It's the gene ration. In the Genes is book, the Torah. So we know that Scripture is about what? Genes. Okay. Well, now, wait a minute. Is this possible that this could have been done through the mRNA? This is what we're going to talk about today. We have this passage here in Revelation chapter 18, verse 23. And it says, "And the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in you, and the voice of the bridegroom of the bride shall be heard no more at all in you. For your merchants were the great men of the earth." Okay, who are the great men of the earth? Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. To break out the billionaire, right? Your merchants were the great men of the earth. How great were they? They got to go to Davos and determine your future. We went to Davos in our august capacity as the richest people on earth. And because we have a substantial number in our bank, we're now all of a sudden smarter than the rest of you. And we have decided what's best for you. You will own nothing, and you will be very, very happy. That's a direct quote. What's it say here? Then after that, the great men of the earth, for by your sorceries were all nations deceived. Now, for the first time in history, all nations have been, like I said, here we're coming flying into Oro Tambo. And it comes time to go get our luggage at the turnstile. And we're walking along, and here's the little stamp on the floor. Social distance. Keep your distance. I looked at it and I said, these guys practice that here in South Africa. We had that nonsense where I live. Little do people know, I'm an anti-social distancing. And so I'm looking at this ridiculous stuff, but here it is on the floor in South Africa, right? So I mean, what is this with the social distancing? Well, guess what? That whole thing went to every nation on earth. There were only a couple of nations in Africa that said we're not going to practice it, and their leaders were assassinated. Now, keep in mind that our friends at Pfizer were the successor in interest of a famous German company called E.G. Farben, which was the company that developed the Zyklon B gas used in the gas chambers during World War II. Its heir is Pfizer. That's a fact. Okay, so here we go, right? By their sorceries, the whole earth is deceived, not some of the earth. When was the last time that the whole earth was deceived? There was always some country that didn't buy it. Maybe a whole continent that didn't buy it. But this time, the whole earth was deceived. Those people on the southern hemisphere of the round earth and those people in the northern hemisphere of the round earth. All equally deceived by what? Their sorceries. But what is the word for sorcery in the Greek? Pharmakia. Pharmakia. By their pharmakia, the whole earth was deceived. Now, I was going to show up today in a white coat and open my remarks with trust the science. Why can I trust the science? Because I have a white coat. Everybody knows you only get a white coat when you're in the lab. And the only way you get in the lab is by being a true scientist. And the only way you get to be a true scientist is by bowing and honoring Charles Darwin's nonsense that he called the origin of species. When I changed the title of my book, Darwin's book, from the origin of species over to the origin of feces. It does run. It does run. Okay, so here we see the sorcery by pharmakia, the whole earth is deceived. Well, let's talk about this deception. And we're going to do that by going to the book of Romans. So we'll start at Romans 1, which, by the way, if you try to read Romans 1 in Canada, you will get sued. In fact, if you announce you're going to preach on Romans 1, you'll get sued in Canada because it's offensive speech. Canada has proposed a bill right now to impose a $25,000 fine on anyone who encroaches in this. I don't even remember the alphabet. This one said something like AQX, LGBTQ, AXI, or I don't know. I mean, she had like 9 letters. I mean, it was ridiculous. And she goes on, she says, anybody who gets in with their safe space by getting within 100 feet of them and says anything offensive that can be construed as offensive, $25,000 fine, and you go to prison. Why can they say this? And why do they do this? Because they worship a different God. Period. Okay. So we start at this passage that would get me in trouble in Canada, fortunately in South Africa, where you guys have free speech and other freedoms that are only protected by high wire or by barbed wire fences. Say what you will. Say what you will. Okay. For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from heaven against all wickedness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. I've got the truth. Oh, good. What's the truth? Well, we now call day night. We now call evil good. And anybody who tries to call good good, we're going to put in jail. And anybody who tries to call evil evil, you're going to get hit with a fine and then go to jail. How's that crackhead? We're the ultimate authority here. We'll tell you what good and evil is and what night day is. But for that matter, we're so much the ultimate authority, we can stop summer from happening next year. We're going to arrest climate change. You know, summer, fall, winter, spring, that stuff. We're going to stop that from happening. You know, up in Alaska, believe me, there was a chant going on for 40 years. Another Alaskan for global warming. When is it going to warm up around here? Because that which may be known of Elohim is manifest in them. There is an intrinsic sense of a creator. It's intrinsic in every person. You look and you see it, you feel it, you smell it. You look out at the stars and you go, man, you know, that's pretty much orchestrated in a specific way. Now, what if I were to tell you, of course, you know, I'm a round earth guy, I believe in the solar system. Stonehenge in Britain, there's a book called Ancient Knowledge. The guy is looking at Stonehenge and he's like, what's with this thing? And so he makes a model of it, and he starts wrapping string around it. And as he wraps strings around it, he starts putting an equation to it. And ultimately he finds that Stonehenge expresses a singular algorithm. And when you look at that singular algorithm and applied it to the solar system, Stonehenge predicts the orbit of the 10 planets within 3 decimal points of accuracy. And he, who was an atheist, became a believer because he said the solar system is in place pursuant to one algorithm. So when you look at it, you see the universe, you go, you know, this stuff is in order. And when you really come to understand the universe, there's not a single microcentimeter out of place. Nothing but nothing is out of place. It's all perfect. And there's no like ether where there's a bunch of big stuff. No, that's perfectly in place. Everything's there. So the truth which is known of Elohim is manifest in every human being. The heavens declare the glory of God. For Elohim has showed it unto them. For from the creation of the world, the invisible things of Yah are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even in his eternal power and divinity, so that they are without excuse. Okay, test time. For those of you who don't have a pen and paper, imagine you have a pen and paper. So here's our test. I want you to take your pen out on your paper and draw the essence of life.
Wow.
What shape is it? What color is it? What's its texture? You got a white sheet there? Yeah, I can see. Oh, yeah. Okay, is that the essence of life? Is there no life unless there's a heart? That's not what Scripture says. Life is in the blood, right? Yeah, love, yeah. Okay, let's do this one. Since we've got that one answered. Let's draw truth. What's its shape? What's its texture? What color is it? How about meaning? That word means, let's draw it. Okay, so we can see now that these trivial things, life, truth, and meaning, have no material existence. nor does consciousness. You know what they say in high school? I stink, therefore I am. This was Descartes, anyway, but we kind of paraphrased it. But the fact is, what you see is what? Consciousness exists. Try to prove it doesn't exist. No fair using your consciousness to do it. Man has singularity, self-awareness. And it is our self-awareness that distinguishes us from animal life. We have singularity. And our singularity is exposed how? In language. And the more complex the language, the more complex the consciousness. You are as you speak. Okay, now he's going to continue. He says what? Yah made it clear to them, being understood by the things that are made, even as eternal power and divinity. So they are without excuse. Because that when they knew Elohim, they glorified him not as Elohim, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imagination, and their foolish heart was darkened. Now, this darkening of the heart leads us to a problem, and this is where we're going to get started today. 2 Thessalonians 2. Now, there's people in the Torah. Paul's a false apostle, that guy. You know, he claimed to be this, he claimed to be that, blah, blah. He's a false apostle. Yeah, you know, I'll tell you what's false. When you go to a church and their Messiah is Paul. How do you know when the church's Messiah is Paul? Well, the gospel said blah, 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 blah. You know, the gospel said, Mashiach said, hey, we came to you, we cast out demons in your name, we healed in your name, we did other wondrous works. And he said, get away from me, I don't know you, you workers of iniquity. And when you point that out to the Pauline church, they respond with, well, Paul said that if you're trying to do works, you've fallen from grace. Well, Paul said, any teaching you have in the Gospels is contradicted by a ministry who says, well, Paul said. And it's always Colossians 2 and Galatians 5. Always. Over and over again. You go to some churches, that's all they preach. And you say, we're a New Testament church. Oh, are you really? Oh, yeah, that's all we preach, New Testament. We're just a New Testament church. Okay, question for you, Mr. New Testament pastor. Mark 8. The disciples come to Mashiach and they ask him a question. And he says, don't you recall that we took 5 loaves and we fed 5,000 and we picked up 12 baskets? And we took 7 loaves and we fed 4,000, we picked up 7 baskets. What part of that don't you understand? So that's my question to the New Testament pastor. Explain it to me. Tell me what's going on there. Old Testament's what's going on there. What are the 12 baskets for? The 12 tribes of Yasharel. Why are there 7 baskets in feeding the 4,000? They had 7 loaves and they come back with 7 baskets. Why? Because of the 7-fold doctrine of this whole creation. For those people over here earlier in the week, we used the menorah to expose to the elect. To the elect. The 7-fold doctrine of his whole creation. Now, this is something that is not given to almost anybody, but it's given to the elect in the book of Hanok. In that last generation, a perverse generation whose deeds are abundant, to the elect will be given the 7-fold doctrine of his whole creation. This is what the 7 loaves are about. Okay, we got a lot of explaining to do. But now, the people who denounce Paul, he was just a fake prophet. Did he prophesy? Here's a question. Did Paul prophesy? Yes. 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians. He prophesied. And it's one of the most important prophecies. Well, we're going to deal with it today. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Adonai Yahweh Mashiach, by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind or be troubled, neither by ruach, nor by word, nor by sefer, as from us, as that the day of Yahweh is at hand. Okay, what is he saying? When you hear wars and rumors of war, and you hear that the end is coming, don't be shaken. Just do what you're supposed to do. Keep on trucking, as we used to say. You've got a call in your ministry. Keep doing it. Don't be doing it. What are we going to do? We need to quickly run away and prep. Right? Like in the States, they talk about, you need to prep by picking up precious metals. Gold and silver? No, brass and lead. And okay, well, I come from the prep is heavy. And that is bad. But the thing is, when you're talking about prep, what's the true prep? Prep your heart. Prep your soul. Prep your mind. That is the true preparation. Not prepping your food. This, your food is going to run out. These people, oh, we got a year's worth of food. Why don't you do that? That way, between our 4 families, you've got 3 months of food. Unless we get greedy, in which case you got a month of food, maybe a week. We might be more hungry than you, right? And guess what? We did collect brass and lead. So, and you didn't. You collected food. So what is your provision? Really, Yah is your provision. Yah is your provision. Yah is, He has placed you exactly where you are supposed to be. For such a time as this. You're where you're supposed to be for such a time as this. To do the things that He's called you to do. And to be at peace and to be without fear. Oh yeah, the world's coming. Yeah. I've seen worse. I've had worse. The end of the world is going, yeah. And of course, I tell people, look, truth is, what's the passage says in Scripture? I knew you, I knew your name before you were formed. Right? Before the foundation of earth, I knew you. Well, if He knew us before the foundation of the earth, how did we get here now? We chose it. Okay, I'm going to put you on earth. What do you want to be? You want to be during the Elizabethan times? Would you like to be during the Dark Ages? You should be at night. Maybe you want to go there during the Stone Age. You can just be a caveman. Right? And you're sitting up there and, oh, no, the exciting time is the end times. That's where I want to be. Okay, you chose it, live with it. Deal with it. Okay, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there comes a falling away first, which is happening to a life. Right? Falling away. It's falling away so much that the head of the Roman Christian Church, the Pope, has espoused Gaia worship. Oh yeah, Gaia. And I'm going to talk about Gaia worship tomorrow, or maybe later on this afternoon. Gaia worship has been around for a long time, but it got rebirthed in the 20th century through a doctrine called ecofascism. And it was promoted in order to drive up the cost of commodities, namely oil, and forestries and so forth, and drive them up by claiming artificial scarcity. And of course, the desire to criminalize exhaling. When I was a young guy, I think I was 22 maybe, my brother and I formed a group called the Bureau. And what we were going to do is we were going to take this hardened position of absurd socialism to propose at the most ridiculous things you could propose in order to force people to wake up. So one of our first proposals was the life license. You live at the privilege of the state, and we're going to issue you a license to see whether or not you can stay alive another day. And we thought that was so absurd that nobody would ever think about adopting that. We were wrong. The socialists were just like, oh yeah, that's a great one. And pretty soon we realized every idea we were coming up with, they were actually going to adopt. They didn't find it absurd at all. So we abandoned the Bureau. But when you talk about criminalizing exhaling, guess what that is? That's a life license. You're a carbon criminal. I'm a carbon criminal. Yes, you've exhaled 22,000 times a week, and we've accumulated that over your lifetime, and your carbon dioxide number is off the charts. You need to pay a carbon tax. But what are you going to do with that carbon tax? Buy myself a new condo on the 88 Ford in downtown San Francisco. What do you think I'm going to do with it? You're not getting the money I'm getting. How much money are you going to need? Well, the IPCC estimated that tax needed to raise $23 trillion in 1998. 23 trillion in new taxes, carbon taxes, because carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that causes global warming. False. Water is the gas that causes global warming, not carbon dioxide. of all the carbon dioxide output in the world. And you go to China where they're just pumping it out in downtown Beijing. 1% of the total CO2 that enters the atmosphere every year. You know where the other 99% comes from? Evaporation off the oceans. So in order to stop carbon, this excess of CO2, Bill Gates has decided to pave over the Pacific Ocean. There was ever, you want to talk about not the sharpest knife in the core. That guy is in. Okay. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come until except there come a falling away first, and that the man of sin be revealed, and the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim, or that is worshipped, so that as Elohim sits in the temple of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. Remember not that I told you when I was yet with you, I told you these things? And now you know that which withholds, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity does already work. Only he who now lets will let until he is taken out of the way. And then shall that lawless one be revealed. Now, a lot of people say, well, Al Lindsay described him as the Antichrist. You know, Nikolai of Carpathia, he's supposed to show up as the Antichrist. You know, Antichrist is not a person. Antichrist appears in 1 John and in 3 John. And it describes people who deny that Mashiach came in the flesh. It's a spirit. The man of lawlessness, however, is a singular guy. So, let's see what we can expect from a man of lawlessness. Let's just put some lawless stuff on there, okay? Because we know that law is about a regular order of things, okay? So, okay. 1, unlawful birth. What does that mean? Born in adultery, born out of adultery. Right? 2, unlawful name. Unlawful birth certificate. Unlawful college degree. Unlawful family heritage. Unlawful citizenship. Unlawful social security number. Unlawful postgraduate studies, if any. Unlawful draft registration. Unlawful marriage. Unlawful family. That's a lot of unlawfuls. Now, we know some interesting things about this here unlawful fellow. We'll go back to Revelation to find out what about it. Because Revelation is going to tell us about this beast, right? That rises out of the sea. And this beast that rises out of the sea is going to trample the outer court of the temple for how long? How long does that happen? 42 months. Right? Revelation 11:1. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel said, saying, Rise and measure the temple of Elohim and the altar and them that worship therein. But the court, which is without the temple, read out and measure it not. For it is given unto the other nations, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot for 42 months. So we might ask ourselves the question, when do we start that count? When do we start that count? Revelation 13. Oh, well, Satan is going to come down here and take control. Well, no. Okay. And you see here, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. And his feet were the feet of a bear, and his mouth is the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his great power. And the dragon gave him his great power. No, it's not the dragon. It's the beast that gets the power. It has the power of the dragon. Well, I wonder if we can find a point when this man of lawlessness got the power of the dragon. So let's put that up here as a question. Question number 1. When was the power of the dragon given to the man of lawlessness? When did that happen? That's our question. Let's put a question mark here. We'll give it a standard question mark. Okay. Now, we're going to see that what happens. It was given unto him to make war with the Kodashim and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the Sefer of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man has an ear, let him hear. He that leads into captivity shall go into captivity, and he that kills with the sword shall be killed by the sword. Here is the patience and his faith for the shame. Okay. So somebody uttered the phrase here earlier, Barack Obama. All right. I did a show here Wednesday night, in the middle of the night, with my friend Scott Bennett and Jim Besson. And, you know, the show was scheduled for 5 p.m. Alaska time, which is 3 a.m. South Africa. Well, fortunately, I woke up at 2:50. And so I wrote him and I said, hey, Scott, do you still do the show? He says, yeah, I'm doing it. So send me the link. I said, I'm not going to appear by video, but I will appear by audio. So I appeared by audio. We got to talking about it. Jim Fetzer was quite the scholar. And he graduated magna cum laude from Princeton University with his PhD, to give you an idea. A brilliant guy. And he came forward with his analysis. You know, I think it was in the 2020 election, that the guy who currently holds himself out as Joe Biden is not Joe Biden at all. He's a Hollywood actor. I even know what his name is. I don't remember it right now. But he's a Hollywood actor because Joe Biden died in 2017. Now, this is why you can't prosecute this guy who's sitting in office, because it's not Joe Biden. We got all these crimes on this guy. Yeah, but Joe Biden's dead. You can't prosecute a corpse, right? And that's the reality of it. So legally, you can say he's committed all these crimes all you want, but he's dead, so what are we going to do? So here's this guy who, by the way, all that stuff about him fumbling and falling on the stairs, being dumb and all that stuff, that's complete fraud. That's total act. He is the puppet. He is, and we're not even sure he's in the White House. For the first year, they were operating at a fake White House in Atlanta, Georgia, and everything was green screen. We've done diagnosis of this. You can tell the trees are different, shrubberies different, some of the rose leaves are different, and so forth. But here he is, and he's trying to pretend to be the president. Well, why is he trying to pretend to be the president? Because he's not running the show. The guy running the show is Barack Obama. and Valerie Jarrett and his whole crew. So there was a video that came out last year. Joe Biden was at a celebration at the White House, and Barack Obama showed up. They wouldn't even talk to that guy. Nobody in the White House would even look at him. He's like, Barack is me here. They're like, shoot, why shoot? You don't talk to paid help. Get away. I'm not talking to you. No one would talk to him. And they were all clamoring around Obama. Why? Because he's the one making the decisions. And he is the one making the decisions. Okay, so now we're going to embark into this. How are we doing on time here, Chris? So good? Okay. All right, so you guys need to know I'm kind of an expert on Barack Obama, having spent, I don't know, 10 years on research on this stuff. I even published a book called The Obama Error, describing one portion of this detail. And I was involved in 43 lawsuits in the United States trying to get him his birth certificate, and which we lost all 43, by the way. There wasn't a single one that was sustained. But you have to keep in mind that how do you know a person is a citizen of a country? If you're driving down the road and someone pulls you over and says, okay, Chris, prove to me that you're a South African citizen. Well, I was born here. I've lived here my whole life, but that doesn't prove to me anything. Prove to me that you're a South African citizen. There's only one instrument you can use to prove it. What is it? Birth certificate. Yeah. And your birth certificate tells the whole tale. Now, question? Speak up.
Can't they just put a tube and see all the minerals and stuff like that in that one?
Are you talking about for identifying the body?
No, for identifying where it's been.
No, probably not. But I can tell you, we have a hard history as to where he grew up. And it's everything but what he says and everything but what everybody else says. And believe me, I've been through this thing. I've been through this war. And it took us a long time, but we had a former MI6 guy who was retired, who was helping us. And his job with MI6 was to identify former Nazis in the free world. That's what his job was, to read his whole book. And so he was on our team and he was helping us. Martha Trowbridge was part of his team. I mean, I could go on the list of guys, and almost every one of these guys were either sanctioned into oblivion with hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines that bankrupted them, and then they eventually died. In fact, almost all of them died. Mario Puzo, who was dead. He was another guy that helped. Leo D'Onofrio, they tried to kill him 3 times. He told me one time he was hiding under a dumpster at 5 a.m. in the morning with guys chasing him. And he had to flee to Europe to get away for a while or to keep his life. And I haven't been in touch with him in 2 years now. And there were other people who were involved. Everybody that was involved, their life was threatened and everything else. It was just sanctions, you can't imagine. At one point, I had literally 7 hours sleeping in our house, and this helicopter lands on the roof at 3 a.m. I mean, right on the roof of our bed there. You know. So I went up the front, and I'm like, I got the front door sign. Hey, what do you think you're doing? People are up here sleeping now. Hit the road, right? Well, they woke up the whole neighborhood, right? It was some Black Hawk that was on top of my house. And Stephanie will also say by the time they were gonna kill me in downtown Everett. And I come home, but she came home and she said, oh yeah, before you leave for work, you need to know there's 3 black Suburbans and 2 black cars down at the foot of the hill. I'm like, what? Never happened where we live. So I'm gonna take the back road, right? Well, the next thing I know, I've got a county sheriff on my tail. And so I'm going to shake him. So I shake him. I go, please almost check that the back road. As soon as I take the back road, go to the county sheriff. I get up to Everett PD. Whoops, you were right behind me. He's putting in the bucket all the way to the office. So I get to the office and I go upstairs and I call my webmaster. I said, Vince, I'm being surveilled. He says, oh, get out of here. You're so out of your mind. You know, you're just a paranoid idiot. I said, look, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't out to get you. So he says, well, I'm going to go to your house, find out for myself. Big mistake on his part. He goes to my house, he gets picked up by a black Suburban, then he gets picked up by the county sheriff, then he gets picked up by the Everett PD. I look out the window of my office, and there he is, and they've got a pullover right in front of the office. And he comes in, and he goes, yeah, you're in surveillance. Well, at that time, I knew Hal Turner in person. And I wrote Hal, I said, Hal, they're doing a surveillance on me. So he goes public with it. And then I called a friend at WorldNet Daily, and I said, look, I got this thing going on. So WorldNet Daily starts doing research on it live, right? So Vince gets to my office, and he said, what are we going to do now? And I said, well, we do what we always do in these kind of situations. He said, what's that? Go to lunch. So we walk out of the building. We're walking down the street, and as we're walking down the street, and a cop car's just, you know. So we go up to this restaurant, and we go in the restaurant. I look at the menu, and it's, you know, all pork. I said, I'm not eating here. Let's get out of here, you know. So we come out, and we walked out, and we went down around the block to the subway. Well, we lost them. They thought we were in that restaurant. And so it takes them 20 minutes to finally find us. When they finally find us, this guy comes in. He's about 6'9", and he's wearing this, you know, of this 45 with a 15-round bag in the back of his pants. And he comes in and he's like, and he sees me. Yeah. So he walks over to the counter, he's standing at the counter, he's glaring. And Vince, who's a former Canadian hockey player, he's like, man, I wonder what this guy's like. So Vince walks over and gets on the other side of the guy's like, he takes his coat, he pulls it over, you see that part on, buddy? You're next. Yeah. So I realized what he was up to, so I took my coat off to show them that I didn't have any concealed weapon. Took it off. See, I'm not packing anything. See? And then about that time, I called Bob Unruh. I said, Bob called me. He calls me from WorldNet Daily. I said, Bob, what's going on? He says, well, we ran the story. It's got 8 million hits so far. I said, you said 8 million hits? He says, yeah, I've got 14 calls into Homeland Security, 8 calls into the Snohomish County Sheriff. Nobody will call me back. I said, well, nobody needs to call you back. I can take a picture of the guy right now and send it to you. The guy heard it out the door again. But he was there to kill me. He was there to kill me. And so the next thing I know, we see this little guy come up and he's got this earpiece in his ear, you know. And he comes up and he's standing there at the window, he's looking at me. We've got him. And he said, you know, she's there eating lunch. And I looked at Dan and I said, hey, you want some chips? But anyway, that was Barack Obama. That was 2009 that happened. They thought they were going to get me. Helicopter on the roof, right? We've had helicopters like Stephen Benoon and I, we had gunships flying over our head in Atlanta. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? But this was because we had unearthed the truth about Barack Obama. Okay, so I'm going to go through the truth. Put down this list. Unlawful birth. Okay. His real father was Malcolm X. And Malcolm X, by the way, that's an alias. His real name was Malcolm Little. He didn't like that last name, so he became Malcolm X. And then he later changed his name to Marie Malek Shabazz. And his real mother was a woman named Joanne Newman, also an alias, and she was 18 at the time. And she was Malcolm X's girlfriend, white girlfriend, while Malcolm X was leading the highly segregationist Nation of Islam. He was in trouble for that. The leadership was like, we hear you have a white girlfriend. Oh, big trouble. Okay. Now, Joanne Newman is a very interesting character. Still living today, by the way. Okay, here's the truth of Joanne Newman. How did she get the last name Newman? They changed it when they came in to America under Operation Paperclip. What's Operation Paperclip? That was when the United States government imported Nazi leadership in order to fight the communists. We've always had Nazis in the United States, always. One of the big Nazis was a guy named George Sherp. George Sherp was an assassin who was then sent to the United States to open a bank in order to house Nazi money in the 30s in case the Nazis lost World War II. And he opened up a bank called Union Bank, which funded E.G. Farben's production of the gas Zyklon B that was used in the gas chambers, the camps. Most people don't know, but the owner of Auschwitz was a guy named Herbert Walker, who was good friends with another fellow in America named Sam Bush, also a Nazi. The guy who designed, the architect that designed Auschwitz was a guy named Karl Rove. Now, George Scherf was living in Germany. And I have a picture of George Scherf and his wife and their son, whose name was also George, sitting in a room with Joseph Mengele, Otto Skorzeny, Martin Bormann, and Richard Gere in their living room. Well, Sam Bush agrees to adopt George Scherf and his son, George Scherf, and George Scherf Jr. takes on the name George Bush. But he wanted to have a middle name, so he took on the names of the guy who owned Auschwitz, George Herbert Walker Bush. His son, when he became president, used as his chief of staff the grandson of the architect of Auschwitz, Karl Rove. Karl, you know him as Karl Rove. Usurper to the presidency, always a Nazi, and always working for a new world order. It's rumored that George H.W. Bush was the last one to see Nikola Tesla alive. And funny, most of his paperwork disappeared that night. Interesting stuff. Guess who stood in front of the library in Daley Plaza on November 23rd, 1964? George H.W. Bush, supervising the assassination of JFK. Oh, yeah. Well, George H.W. Bush made an interesting deal in 1991. One of their big clients was the Bin Laden family out of Saudi Arabia. And they made a deal, even after he won the war in Iraq and had a 92% approval rating, he agreed to step down from the presidency in order to put his son-in-law, Bill Clinton, into office for 8 years. And he said, we have to put a Democrat in here for 8 years. Okay, we'll do that. After that, I want my son to be in the presidency. And the Saudis said, okay, you can do that. Only on the condition that after that, you put a Muslim in the presidency for 8 years. All of this was agreed upon in 1991. So Joanne Newman, her mother was an interesting woman. Her mother's name was Madeline Newman. At least that's the name she took when she came to the States. What was her real name? Ava Braun. Yes. Her and Adolf Hitler had escaped Germany to Argentina, along with several other major Nazi operatives. And Hitler, most people don't know this, but Hitler fathered 42 children, all out of wedlock, all of them. And of course, Hitler himself was born illegitimately because his real father was a Rothschild in Austria. So Madeline Newman takes her daughter and says, I can't stand Argentina. I got to get out of here. She spent 1 year in Brazil. I can't stand this here. Operation Paperclip opened up. Oh, let's go into the States. I'll take on a new name, Newman. I'll become a new man. I'll take on a new name. She can't go by New Woman, so she goes by Newman. And her daughter, Johanna, conspicuously German, Johanna, becomes Joanne. Joanne starts having an affair with Marie Malik Shabazz, gets pregnant and has a baby boy in 1959 in New York that she names Marie Shabazz. Okay, now she's only living 2 blocks down the street from Malcolm X, by the way, in New York. And Malcolm X's wife knows about her, not happy. So, 1965, April of 1965, what happens? Nation of Islam says, we've had it with you, Malcolm. He's up on stage talking. The guy comes up with a 10-gauge shotgun, hits him with both barrels of a 10-gauge shotgun. Both barrels of a 10-gauge. And after he goes down, another guy walks on stage with a 357 and puts 5 rounds in. Who was outside at that time? Joanne Newman was right outside the hall when that happened. And she realizes they're going to kill her and the baby. So she takes the baby and she calls mom, who, by the way, married an American spy who was spying for the Germans during World War II, a guy named Stanley Armour Dunham, and they moved to Hawaii. So she calls her and says, Mom, you got to take the baby because they're going to kill him. So she ships Barry Shabazz off to Hawaii to be with his aunt, Joanne Newman's half-sister, Stanley Ann Dunham. So he ends up in a family where they claim that they are his parents. But guess what? Unlawful family heritage. They weren't his parents. But they take him to where? Indonesia. And in Indonesia, they adopt him, and his name becomes legally Barry Soetoro. By the way, his aunt did this fake family. They were both spies working for USAID. His name becomes Barry Soetoro. And what does he elect to do? Mom or auntie, I want to go to a Muslim school, a madrasa. And I don't want you to put me in any madrasa. I want you to put me into the madrasa that's going to make me a hafiz. That is to say, somebody who can recite the Quran from memory in Arabic. And that's where he went to school until he was finally shipped back to Hawaii. And then his mom says, okay, it's time for you to go to college. They ship him out to California to go to Occidental, and he enters Occidental as a foreign student, an Indonesian citizen. A foreign student enters Occidental. He's got C's and D's going on, working as a male prostitute with another friend who's now a transgendered individual that shares power with him right now. And suddenly, in 1980, he transfers to the prestigious Columbia University. Really? Columbia doesn't accept transfer students at all. You have to matriculate from one to the end. And he's a political science major with George Stephanopoulos. Funny, they never saw him. They never saw him in a deli. Nobody ever rented him an apartment. He didn't appear in any of the yearbooks. He was never in any class function ever. But he ends up with a Columbia degree. Oh, unlawful college degree. How did he get that college degree? The CIA paid for it. Because he was in 1978, his mother, who was then working for the CIA, who had taken on the name Elizabeth Duke, wanted as a most wanted fugitive because she was part of the Students for a Democratic Society that had blown up buildings in the late 60s and 70s with her friends Bill Ayers and, what was her name? Can't remember. Bernadine Dorn. Bernadine Dorn, who runs the American Bar Association now, was quoted as saying when she found out about the Manson murders in LA and that they had put a fork in the stomach of the girl, Sharon Tate, to kill the baby, what was her reaction to that? Pharrell. She now runs the American Bar Association. But Elizabeth Duke, so Joanne Newman becomes Elizabeth Duke. A wanted fugitive who specializes in fake ID. Fake driver's license, fake passports, fake birth certificates. That's her specialty. Now, so Barack Obama had Indonesian citizenship. And he decides, I'm going to take on a different name. What name? Let's take on the name Barack Hussein Obama. Let's talk about this for a second. Barack. Now we know that in the Quran, there is this figure called the Mahdi. You ever heard that? Mahdi?
Yeah.
There's a figure called the Mahdi, who is going to be the savior that comes back, the 13th Imam, and he's going to save all the world by killing all the Christians. But the Mahdi has to meet certain principles. One, he has to come in on a white horse. Well, interestingly enough, the Quran goes on to tell us about when Muhammad ascended into heaven. And he ascended into heaven on a jewel-covered white horse named Torah. The jeweled horse of Muhammad. But the Mahdi cannot be the Mahdi unless he has the name of the heir of Muhammad. Now, Muhammad didn't have any sons. He had a daughter, Fatima. But she had two sons. So the Mahdi must have the name of one of those two sons, whose names were Hassan, and the other was Hussein. Hussein. Okay. So the heir. And Obama is Swahili for Usama, the lion warrior of Muhammad. I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Heaven also construed in Ezekiel under the Hebrew word Bama. Lightning, Barak. And when you say his lightning from heaven, Barako, Bama. Okay. Now, so here we are. He just takes that name. There's no legal name change that happens anywhere. Well, maybe there was. I found one in British Columbia. But guess what? He claims I was born in Kenya. Now you guys might, now this is one of the things that the birth certificates were so ridiculous. Place of birth. Okay, when were you born? 1961. Place of birth, Kenya. Come on, Africans. When was Kenya formed? 1964. 1961, it was British East Africa. It wasn't Kenya until 1964. And his race, Kenyan. There's no race of Kenyan. This is the stuff that's on his birth certificate, right? They gotta think we're just stupid. And then he was born at the Capilliani Maternity Center. Well, that didn't take that name until 1973. Believe me, just believe me, it's perfect. Okay? I'm just telling you the obvious stuff. The obvious stuff. Okay. So he takes on his fake name, Barack Hussein Obama. And he takes on a fake father, Barack Obama, that he claims is from Kenya. And a fake place of birth, claiming it's Kenya. Well, guess what? He pushed that claim forward. And because he pushed that claim forward, he got himself British nationality under the British Nationality Act of 1981, which said if you were born in Kenya, if you were born in British East Africa before it became Kenya, you can apply and get British citizenship. So he got a British passport, and he flew into Moscow as a senator in 2006 under a British passport. And he was arrested in Moscow as a British spy. But that wasn't his first time in Moscow. Because what happens is this. He takes on this name with the CIA under Operation Pegasus. Operation Pegasus. And this was paid for, Pegasus, this was paid for by a sheikh, a very wealthy Saudi sheikh, named Sheikh bin Talal. Sheikh bin Talal was recruited by a guy named Don Warden, who had become Muslim. And Don Warden, who was present at the shooting of Malcolm X, he comes to meet Sheikh bin Talal and he says, look, I got a guy who's got the pedigree we're looking for. And he's a Muslim from the tip of his toes to the top of his head. Bin Talal says, show me. So they show him. Yeah, that guy, that's going to work. That's going to work. So he's funding the CIA project to make this guy presidential material. So they invent the name Barack Hussein Obama, and they give him this identity of being a Columbia graduate. And then where do they send him? 1981. Well, his mother is working in Lahore, Pakistan, his fake mother. So they send him to Lahore. And you know what he does in Lahore from 81 to 86? Direct interface with Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, working with the Mujahideen. Why? Because he's a Muslim and he speaks fluent Arabic. But you have to remember that his mother, Joanne Newman, first of all, if Adolf Hitler's father was a Rothschild, then is Adolf Hitler Jewish? Yes. Adolf, yeah, well, but Jewish by the way the Nazis would identify. And as was Ava Braun, Jewish. So Barack Obama has on his mother's side Jewish heritage, but on his father's side, Muslim, and by faith, Muslim. All right. So he's an interface with Osama bin Laden, but in 1988, he decides to go to a university called, there we go, Africans, you guys know this, Patrice Lumumba. You remember Patrice Lumumba? Well, guess who built the university in his honor? The Soviets. And where was the university? Downtown Moscow. And what did they train? They brought in students from Africa to train them as to how to overthrow the African nation and make it a communist nation. And Barack Obama went to that university, and his thesis was how you overthrow a nation and make it a communist nation. That's what his study was. But remember, in 1989, the Soviet Union collapsed, and there was a story written in the West German press. Poor Barack Obama can't get out of Moscow. Oh, poor Barack, he can't get out of Moscow. All this stuff is repressed, and you can't find this stuff. But he does get out of Moscow. When he gets out of Moscow, Sheikh Ben Talal says, you know what, I want you to go back to the U.S. We've got a mind for you to run for the presidency. Remember, that's what we're doing here. So Barack says, okay, so he comes back to the U.S., and Ben Talal goes to Harvard University, and he says, you know, Harvard, we want a Muslim study center on Harvard, on the Harvard campus. Will you do that? I'm going to give you $25 million to build this study center. Really? On one condition. What's the condition? You put Barack Obama in law school and make him the president of the law school. So they made Barack Obama the president of law school. He had no degree at all. He was a flunky out of Occidental with horrible grades. And they put him in as the law school as president. Now, look, I went to law school. There's no president of the law school. You have the chief editor of the law review, who's the smartest guy in the school, but there's no president. But there was an exception for Barack. The woman who took the $25 million at Harvard and admitted him is Elena Kagan, who now sits on the U.S. Supreme Court, appointed by Barack Obama. Now, after he gets on and becomes a lawyer in Chicago, he goes back to visit his good friend, who his mother's best friend, Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, where they engage in nothing but fraudulent real estate transactions under 22 Social Security numbers. He didn't have one. You guys have retirement numbers here? What do you have?
Good ID numbers.
ID numbers?
Identity numbers.
Identity numbers, yeah. Well, in the States, it's SSN, security numbers. You have one for life, but not Barack. He had 22. And he finally settled on one that belonged to a guy that died in 1981. Then his mother got it. Because remember, she forges IDs, right? Okay. So his unlawful postgraduate studies, they were unlawful. He couldn't qualify them. They bribed his way in. Unlawful citizenship, he had British citizenship, totally unlawful. Claimed to be born in Kenya, wasn't. Lied. CIA forbidden. SSN number, unlawful, 22 of them. His draft registration, they forged that in 2008. And there was a gal, I forget her name now, she provided me with all the information on her draft registration, proved it was important, did inverted the stamp, claimed from 1980, of the 2008 stamp, claiming it was 1980 that he registered the last year, because guess what? You don't register for the draft, you cannot hold a federal position, period, illegal. Can't do it. Oh, we better provide draft registration, so they did. Hey. Okay, let's talk about his marriage.
Oh, yeah. Michael comes in.
You know, I mean, he's referred to Michelle twice in public as Michael. And now, of course, the pictures have surfaced from Michael when their relationship first started. When Michael appears as Michael, right? Played football for the Oregon Ducks, 83 tackles, 7 sacks. One of the only women I know who can military press 180 pounds over her head. Come on, ladies, I want you to think in your memory, which one of your friends wears a size 13 and a half shoe?
Shoulders like that.
Yeah. Right? But guess what? Well, they had 2 kids. Well, where's their birth certificate? Well, they were born with a midwife. That's why they didn't have a birth certificate. Can you show us the picture of the midwife and her husband? Sure can. Guess what? The kids are spitting images of the midwife and her husband. The younger girl looks like mom, the older girl looks like dad. I mean, spitting images. So they get rent-a-kids, and for the first time in history, you have a man married to a man holding the highest political office in the world. That makes him the most immoral persona in human history. He beats out Caligula, he beats out Commodus, he beats out the decadent Romans, the most immoral person in human history. And what does he do? He takes office like, okay, I support the Defense of Marriage Act. Until he gets reelected. All of a sudden, gee, we're going to have same-sex marriage legalized here. Well, thanks, Barack. Why do we have to have that marriage? Because we've got it going on here. Joan Rivers tells the whole world that that's the truth, and she's dead a week later.
Yep.
Right? And what does Michelle come out with last year? You know, Franny I Am, I don't know what the name of the book was, but it was a book, you know, expressing trans rights and how important they are from a first-hand perspective. And she's admitted it, right? Or he's admitted, whatever you want to call it. So he had an unlawful family. Unlawful family. So what you see here is the grandson of Adolf Hitler. The grandson of Adolf Hitler, the son of Malcolm X, Jewish and Muslim, and in the proper pedigree, prepared to launch Nazism in the United States and throughout the world, and prepared to engage in a communist overthrow of the United States at the same time. Look what he has done since he reattained the authority of the White House in 2021. So, next question. When does the 42-month count begin? Answer. January 2021. Now, let's talk. Revelation 12. You guys read this. Haven't you guys been in my Bible class? Revelation 12. And there appeared a great wonder in the heavens, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her feet a crown of 12 stars. You know what that is? That's a sign in the heavens. Yeah, it was September 23rd, 2017. That's the first time that was seen in the heavens in the history of humankind. September 23rd, 2017. All right. Let's count the days. Now we know a couple of things are going on here. One, this woman is giving birth to a male child, right? Okay, so let's start here with our date, September 23rd, 2017. Now, by the way, that wasn't Yom Kippur, it was after Yom Kippur, and it was before the Day of Atonement. It wasn't a particular date. Well, how come we're doing this sign on not a particular date? Because guess what? Male child's being born. How long is the male child, is the mom unclean with the male child? 7 days. Okay. So that would take us to September 30th. October 1st, 2017, Yom Kippur. Is the day that the child can be presented. Now, on that date, October 1st, 2017, 55 people were murdered in Las Vegas. By Lee Harvey Oswald, according to the Warren Report. A lone shooter from a hotel room owned by Sheikh bin Talal took down 55 people at a concert. As an offer. That's exactly right. It was an offer. It was a blood sacrifice for Yom Kippur. This is the date we begin to count. 1,260 days. What's it read? And she, being with child, cried travailing and birth pain to be delivered, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and cast it into the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a male child who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to Elohim. Is he on earth right now? No, he was caught up to heaven and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared of Elohim, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Well, that takes us to March 21st, 2021. What happens after that? Satan is cast to earth to make war against the Kodashim. Now, when you look out of the world and you see all the troubles that we're under right now, have you guys ever seen a time like this in your lifetime? These are extraordinary times. Why? Because Satan is at war with us. And he's at war with us ever since March 21st, 2021. And it's going to continue for 42 months, leading us to the conclusion of this whole thing, which is August 24th, 2024. Now, if we count the months here from our buddy, when did the 42 months begin? They began in January 21. Okay, so January 2022, 12 months. 2023, 24 months. 2024, 36 months. And then 6 more months takes us to July 2024. You see this? Now, interestingly enough, in the States, we had a solar eclipse just prior to this on August 21st, 2017. That eclipsed only the United States. It came in uneclipsed over the West Coast and crossed over and exited over the East Coast, crossing all 5 cities in the United States that go by the name Salem. You know what I'm talking about. Now, a solar eclipse is a bad sign for a nation. Your power has been eclipsed. Your economy has been eclipsed. Your authority has been eclipsed. Your social order has been eclipsed. All of these things were eclipsed. Your peace have been eclipsed. See it? Now, there'll be another solar eclipse in 2024, in April of 2024, that's going to cross like this. We have this one cross like this,
This one's going to cross like this in April of 2024. And in August 2024, there'll be another eclipse that crosses like this. You know what that forms? The Aleph. The authority of Yah will come upon the United States definitively in August of 2024. The Antichrist will make war against the saints until August of 2024.
That's the part.
Yeah. The 5 months you're talking about? Yeah. The 5 months when the scars break out, sores break out. Yeah. So now you can begin to see a completely different equation. Now there's people out there saying Trump's the Antichrist. Trump is the Antichrist. Well, Trump is applying for the job. You know, could you arrest me on Passover? Then maybe convict me on, Good Friday. You know, you ever wonder about the name of Good Friday? Here we are, Good Friday. What are you guys going to call this game? We're going to call it Good Friday. Because that's when Rome became all powerful. Good Friday. We're so powerful, we executed the son of Elohim. Then we went on to execute the rock upon which our church was built by hanging him upside down on the cross. And then we executed his top apostle, Paul, by beheading him. See, is there anything more powerful than Rome? Who can make war with the beast? And who is like the beast? Can we make war with the beast? I can't make war with the beast. I'm just hanging out here. You know, I'm not making war with anybody. I'm just kind of telling you guys the truth about the Antichrist. So I just saw this stuff pretty early on because Barack Obama appeared as the rider on the white horse. The rider on, and I saw, look, the Lamb opened up one of the seals, and I heard this word, the noise of thunder. And one of the four living creatures saying, come and see it. And I saw, behold, a white horse. And he that sat on it had a bow. By the way, the word for bow there is yes. But also rainbow. In the Hebrew, the same word. He had a rainbow and a crown or laurel wreath was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Now, you know that the word in Greek for bow also means cloth mask. Interesting stuff, huh? And the bow, he had a bow and he went forth to conquer. Well, it's interesting to talk about a white horse because we have this interesting passage here in Revelation 3. And here we're going to see a discussion that's going to, or Revelation 2, excuse me, that's going to the church of Pergamos. Unto the angel of the called out assembly in Pergamos write, these things says he which has the sharp sword with two edges. I know your works and where you dwell, even where Satan's seat is. What? Oh yeah, Satan had his seat in Pergamos. And you hold fast my name and have not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr who was slain among you, where Satan dwells. Oh, okay, so Pergamos has Satan's seat. Not anymore. Otto von Bismarck showed up and said, hey, where is Satan's throne? Right there. The very place that was built and constructed to raise Jupiter as Satan's element on the theosophy of all the demons. Each step to the ascent has a demon associated with the step. One of those demons is Echidna. You know who Echidna is? Mother of all demons? Echidna? Yeah, you do. She's the logo of Starbucks. Echidna. Well, Otto von Bismarck says, you know, like that temple, we can use that because we can have the authority of Satan's throne. So he packed it up, stone, column, sculpture, everything, stairs, and moved it all to Berlin. And there it sits to this very day. So a certain Adolf Hitler walks in there. I'm interested in all occult and pagan power that's possible to be raised any place, anywhere, at any time. What have you got? Albert Speer says, well, let's go look at the Pergamum altar. That's the throne of Satan. So they go over there and he looks at it and he's like, that's good, but it's too small. My ideas are a lot bigger than that. I want you to build me something that's taken from that
but make it much bigger. So they built the Nuremberg Tribunal. And the pictures you see of Hitler standing up there on the giant podium with everybody you see counting him, the thousands of troops and all the red and black banners, the swastika, that's the Nuremberg Tribunal, a replica of the Pergamum altar. And that's the last time we saw the Pergamum altar, right? Barack Obama, who went to Berlin and wanted to speak at the Reichstag while he was running for office in 2008, and Angela Merkel, one of his grandmother's sisters, daughter of Adolf Hitler, said, you're not speaking at the Reichstag, not going to happen. Go speak at the Temple of Nike. So he goes under the column of Nike and he ends his speech with, and this is my struggle. How do you guys say my struggle in the comments?
What's that?
Yes, my strike. My strike. That is my strike.
Yeah, in German, Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf. And this is my struggle. This is Mein Kampf. He said it at the column of Nike in Berlin, the grandson of Adolf Hitler. Then he goes to get nominated in Denver, in the Denver Coliseum. The Denver Coliseum is marked by a very large white horse whose name is Thunder. And Barack Obama was nominated on a replica of the Pergamum altar under a white horse named Thunder in 2008. You can. All right, now we have to answer, we have one last question to answer, and then we'll call this a break for this session. Because now you guys know. You know all the gruesome details except that one part. Oh, we haven't got to the birth certificate. I gotta fill you in on the birth certificate. When was the power of the dragon given to the man of lawlessness? Well, you guys are witnesses. Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
Nelson Mandela dies, and all the powers of the world come to South Africa for a funeral. But it's way late. He dies in July, and the funeral isn't going to be until September, October. Well, what they really wanted to do was raise Mandela from the dead, but they couldn't do it because he'd been dead too long. But they had a ceremony planned in this temple where they were going to put Nelson Mandela laying on a stone, and then when the sun came over at a certain time, the sunshine would come down on that temple and lighten the body on the slab, and he was supposed to raise from the dead. You know who laid on that slab instead? Barack Obama. And he has been indwelt ever since.
Was that at the Woodchuck Monument?
What's that?
Would that have been at the Woodchuck Monument?
I think that's where it was, yeah.
Yeah, we have to.
There's another person that. But
Interesting connection, eh? Okay, so remember I told you you can't establish citizenship unless you can show your birth certificate. So we kept asking Barack, where's your birth certificate? And so he puts up this document. It's called the Certificate of Live Birth, which isn't the birth certificate, it's a downstream certificate. And that certificate had his name, claiming he was a Kenyan citizen and so forth. But the birth certificate number was blacked out with a black marker. Then at the bottom of it, it says, if there's any alteration to this certificate at all, it's invalid. Okay, and this is what he's proffering to say, here's my birth certificate. Bill O'Reilly on Fox News, Chris Matthew on CNN. I have his birth certificate right here. They did a computer printout. They printed it out. I have his birth certificate right here with the number blacked out. I said, yeah, you can't use that. That's not genuine. It's artificial. And so when I pointed that out, we came up with a second birth certificate. Only problem with this one, it has to have a state stamp. Now, when you stamp something, you can deboss it or you can emboss it. What's the difference? If you emboss, you push down and the paper goes down. If you deboss, the paper comes up. The paper has to come up on a birth certificate. And it has to have the state seal and that embossing. Well, guess what? His was debossed with just a random stamp. There wasn't even any state seal on it. It was just clunk. And then you got these two idiots saying, "No, we examined it. This is a true birth certificate." I said, "Was that right?" So I did a comprehensive analysis. And the next thing you know, I get an affidavit of the woman who forged it. She told me when she did it, what time she did it, what print shop she did it in. I have a sworn affidavit. And I get a sworn affidavit from the same person, another person who did the first call. They're like, "No, you ain't got no birth certificate." And his answer was, "I never said that was my birth certificate. Someone else said that. That wasn't me." In the meantime, Nancy Pelosi's run around to all 50 states certifying that this guy's an American citizen. How do you know, Nancy? Well, what difference does it make? You know what did she say? You have to pass it to see what's in it. That's what she said about the comprehensive health care. You have to pass it to see what's in it. I said, "Nancy, that's the definition of stool syndrome." So, because of that, we started using that technique for our COVID test. You know, we knew that the PCR test was false. So the only possible way you can get properly tested is to send this stool sample to Nancy Pelosi's office. Anyway, enough of that. So we proved that it's false. So here I am, I'm doing a live television presentation. I did 28 TV shows on this topic, 28. And here we are, we're sitting, we do a live presentation. And here comes the official certified birth certificate from the White House. And so the guy interviewing me says, "What do you think about that?" I said, "It would be proved to be a forgery within 24 hours. Well, I was wrong. It was proved forgery in 4 hours. They had forgotten to flatten the PDF, and so they could unlayer the PDF, the forgery. They could unlayer it. All right. So the cold case posse forms. Let's look into this and find out what's going on here. So I get a phone call. "Steve, can you help us?" I said, "Yeah, I can help you. I know a guy who sold the scanners to the state of Hawaii, who knows everything about this birth certificate. Talk to him." So they talk to Doug, and Doug says, "Okay, I'll take this on." He looks at the birth certificate, comes up with an affidavit, 26 indicia of forgery. I said, "Great, Doug." He calls me and said, "What do I do now?" I said, "Well, Doug, you don't report it to the federal court. You're guilty of misprision of treason." So he goes down and he files it with the court under seal. I said, "Doug, you got to show me your affidavit." "Not doing it." He says, "But I'll tell you this much: the forger signed her name to the document." I said, "Well, you need to show it to me." "Nope, not doing it." Well, that document made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And when it got to the Supreme Court, Justice Roberts says, "We're going to look at this case, Doug, as soon as you unseal it." So he unsealed it, and I got it. Now, you read it, you can't find the forger's name. It's like, where's the name? Well, then I meet the guys from the Cold Case Posse at a conference in Texas, and they're there with Carl Gallups, P.P. Simmons, he called himself on the YouTube channel, Carl Gallups. And he said, "Yeah. We've got a different guy besides Doug Lowe from somebody from Italy who determined that they had borrowed the birth certificate of Joanne Ani, and that this was the same certificate as Joanne Ani." Now, Ani was spelled. Now, he's trying to sell me this bill of goods. He doesn't know I've got Doug Lowe's affidavit. I'm like, "Yeah, Carl, that's interesting. How come you didn't use Doug? Why didn't you call me back?" "Oh, we found the right expert, blah, 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 blah." Cover up. So, how it appears in the birth certificate is like this: capital A, capital H, N-E-E. Now, you guys know, you women know, when you're a maiden name, right? Let's say your maiden name is Smith, but you marry Mr. Jones. And you say, "Okay, my name is Mary Jones, nee Smith." That's the formal way to address your maiden name, right? Mary Jones, nee Smith. So this is telling you, this AH stands for my maiden name. What was your maiden name? One wonders. Anna Hitler. That's who forged the birth certificate, i.e. Joanne Newman, Elizabeth Duke, who, by the way, was appointed to a university position by Chris Christie in New Jersey when he was the governor in 2016. And that's where she's working today. So,
I'm going to ask you guys, let's take some questions. Do you think that this guy qualifies as the man of lawlessness? The man of sin and the son of perdition. The man of sin is not somebody who's full of sin, but somebody who is promoting sin. Barack Obama's agenda, conquer the world with the bow, the rainbow. I don't know about you guys, but I see that six-colored flag. I've seen that flying above the Jewish star in Israel, flying above the Canadian maple leaf in Canada. Barack Obama lit up the White House with those colors. That claims a superior sovereignty to the nation when you do that. On the shoulders, we see that. Now we know. Okay, any questions at all? Come on, you guys got some questions? Anybody got some questions on this?
Like all those conspiracy theorists, we all like drugs and we told everybody there's two conspiracy.
Well, look, conspiracy theorists, that would have been polite if they'd have called us that. Birther was what they called me. Oh, he's a birther. He's a racist because he wants the birth certificate of this guy. I'm just trying to prove that he's an American citizen. I told people, oh, do you think he was born in Kenya? I said, I don't care if he was born under the steps of the White House. Show me the certificate. Now we know, totally corrupt. You guys can see it from here. And you're 14,000 miles away, but you can see it from here. Now, when I tell you that Biden is fake, and that everything that you're seeing happen, ask yourself the question. How many of you realize that Ukraine is a Nazi state? You guys know this? Right? They run around zig-heiling each other. They have swastikas tattooed on their arms and on their chest. They run around in the Gestapo insignia. And they have the same policy, exterminate. I heard an interview of one of these guys in the Azov attack. What do we do with the Russians? Hitler had it right, gas chambers. And guess what? They're the children of Ukrainian Nazis that didn't get any persecution whatsoever. When you go back and you look at the history of the Holocaust, the vast majority of the Jews that were killed, Khazarians if you want to call them that were killed, most of them were killed in Ukraine, Belarus, and Poland. Not Germany, not Hungary, not Greece. Ukraine, Belarus, and Poland. And all the pictures you see in the Holocaust Museum, those were Ukrainians shooting those women holding their children, lining up guys in ditches that they dug, mowing them all down. And they were doing the same, they're doing the same thing right now. This is a Nazi establishment. Who would say, let's fund Nazis in Ukraine with $100 billion US? The son of a Nazi, the grandson of Adolf Hitler. That's who. Who would reenact the war of having Germans attack the Russians at Kursk, the biggest tank battle of World War II? 1.5 million Russians died in that battle. Who would reenact that? Barack Obama. We didn't get it right the first time, we'll get it right this time. Look at it, makes sense. Who would be so busy that he wants to promote transgender affirmation everywhere? Why is that important? Well, it becomes very important if you're married to one. Was Biden married to a transgender? No, Biden was married to his babysitter. Like Macron, he married his babysitter. Anyway, that's enough of that question. It's not true. Now I'll tell you how we proved it's not true. Because neither his real mother nor his fake mother had a passport until 1965. They couldn't have possibly entered Kenya. They couldn't have possibly gotten there. And if you talk to Barack Obama's brothers, his alleged brothers in Kenya, Barack Obama has done them no favors. I mean, if they're his brothers, why does he keep kicking them to the curb? He hasn't done them any favors. And you can't find the family resemblance in that group. He doesn't look like anybody in that family. But the Kenyans want to believe him. Why? Oh, the U.S. president was born in Kenya. This is the story. And then Barack Obama's like, conspiracy theorists want to claim I'm from Kenya. He said it for 17 years in a row. He said it. Anyway, but yeah, you're asking a great question. He was never in Kenya. I mean, I wanted to believe he was in Kenya, that there was a chance that Ann Dunn had gotten into Kenya at some time in 1961, and that she had traveled with Barack Obama and all that. And then we found her we didn't find her passport, but we found her passport application. And her passport application was made only after Malcolm X had been assassinated in 1965. That's when she first applied for a passport.
Since there was a recent attitude, last week, maybe 2 weeks, also just say one is special assignment. You just said Barack will be on a special assignment.
Barack said he's on a special assignment?
Yeah, okay, I'll search it. Yeah.
Into Kenya.
Kenya, yes.
Okay, well, you know, when you talk about Kenya, yeah, maybe, you're right, it fools you. Yeah. But you know, if you go back to Kenya, okay, there was a presidential election. I don't remember the names here exactly, but there was a presidential election where Barack Obama put $1 million into a candidate who lost the election and then staged a revolution. You guys remember this? And there were thousands of churches that were burned down and thousands of people that died in churches burning. You remember this? 2010 maybe? Does this sound familiar to anybody? If I had the name, you guys would come to the meeting. But he tried to impose abortion on Kenya. Kenya said, we're not doing it. And he tried to impose, LGBT rights on Africa. Now Africa is saying, forget, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're going to criminalize. I believe it's the Congo. They're saying right now, oh yeah, how about death penalty for quote unquote aggravated homosexuality? Yeah.
How about the Congo people murder in the Congo? I mean, seriously.
Oh yeah. And those and I'm going to speak a little bit about that tomorrow when we talk about the tribes. We'll talk about the tribal relationship and tribal migration. We'll talk about this a little bit more in detail. But we have to keep a couple things in mind, and I want to share this with you before we get in too far into that. Remember that your place in the kingdom is dependent upon your faith, not your race. It's dependent upon your faith. Abraham believed, and it was accounted unto him as righteousness. Okay? So just keep that in mind. And so we talk about the tribes, and tribal stuff is very, very interesting, so we can see what's happening in history. But it's not going to make a difference in terms of how you believe, why you believe, and what your entrance to heaven means, and how you got there. Yah called you, you didn't call him. Oh, hey, can I? You hear about that lawyer trying to get into heaven? Anyway, so I want to thank you guys for this presentation. Question?
I don't know if it's I need to ask if you know about the man 7 days.
Yes, I do. Yeah, okay, so Sabbatai Tzvi, who was also named, I gotta read his real name, Ben Luria. So Ben Luria, this is, you're talking late 1400s, 15th century. And what had happened is that there was persecution happening in Spain. Most of the Jews were being persecuted. And there were certain rabbis that had fled Spain and went back to, quote unquote, the Holy Land. They couldn't get into Jerusalem, so they set up a quasi-Jerusalem in a town called Sapet. And with the head rabbi, there was a guy named Ben Cordova. Well, Ben Luria shows up. And Ben Luria shows up, and he's an august rabbi, and he's pontificating this and forward that. And they said, Ben Luria, you're pretty cool. And so they allowed him in as a rabbi and a teacher. Then he goes to Constantinople. And when he goes to Constantinople, he's preaching Kabbalah. And as he's preaching Kabbalah, finally the Muslims said, look, That's it. You've gone over the line. You're either going to convert to Islam or we're going to behead you. So he says, okay, I'll do it. So he converts to Islam and takes on the name Sabat Tzvi. And when he does, he comes back to Safed and tells everybody, oh yeah, I was lying about my conversion to Islam. And which is what you have to do, lie. And he began to teach a doctrine of lawlessness. And it wasn't him that really created the occultish Kabbalah. That happened by one of his disciples named Jacob in France, the Jacobites. Yeah, they were the ones that took the Kabbalah to this far extreme occultism. And so it was a generation after him. But he wasn't alone. The question is asked by Paul in the epistles. Shall we sin that grace might abound? That's the question. Because what? If you sin, well, then grace abounds, right? Because you're forgiven. You're forgiven for your sins. So there's a greater level of grace for the greater level of sin. So Paul asks the question, shall we sin that grace might abound? And his answer is, forget it. Forget about it. No. Martin Luther answered it, yes. Sabbati Tzvi answered it, yes. Rasputin answered it, yes. You must sin in order to get great grace. This was the teaching. Now, Martin Luther, to be fair, repented of that in the last 2 years of his life. He repented of all that. But he preached it for years. And so when you talk about this idea of Sabbati Tzvi, Ben Luria, and Cordova, Ben Cordova, and these other people at Satan, this is a doctrine that started in a cult practice that was given even greater burden. Because the Kabbalists would say, okay, if we chant incantation, if we chant the 72-letter name of Yah, which I don't believe is a 72-letter name, but they do. If we chant the 72-letter name of Yah, and we do it correctly, we can translate ourselves into heaven. Now, if you're not supposed to be there, you're dead. Okay? And there are many of them that died doing this. But the idea was to do incantation, which, by the way, Scripture pronounces. You're not supposed to be doing any incantation. That's why Mashiach says, do not use rote prayers. Don't use rote prayers. Don't engage in incantation. But they were doing incantation. Well, guess who picked up that idea? The Romans. Well, we'll use incantation, but we won't use incantation to lift our souls up to heaven. We'll use incantation to force the soul of the Mashiach back down here into the Eucharist. Transubstantiation. But the idea of getting that done through incantation came from the Kabbalists or their predecessors. Incantation. And you know what's used in witchcraft? Incantation. Incantation was incanted. Right? So we don't do incantation. Like I got to tell you, this is a short story. Stephanie decides that we need to stay at this bed and breakfast place at Stone Mountain, Georgia. And she doesn't tell me this place is haunted. I'm like, I don't want to stay in a haunted house. I don't like that stuff at all. Oh, I'm not worried about it. Let's just go. So we get there and go into this place. And this place was creepy. I mean, it was just creepy. And you can go in, you go through the front part, and then you come to this little bedroom that had a grass bed there. And then there was the formal bathroom that had a big tub, all this stuff, brass fixtures, you know. And then you go through the bathroom to the formal bedroom, where they still had a Christmas tree up and the big bedrooms. I stepped into that bed and was like, this place is demon possessed to be the band. I'm not sleeping in here. She said, okay, can we sleep out here? So I locked both doors in the bathroom. Figured out to keep them out. And so we go to bed, and just as I'm falling asleep, here's three of them right here. The first one was a woman, and there were two of them behind her, and they're just laughing. But we're just going to torture the daylights out of you. Your night is going to be wrecked. And I just looked at them and I said, I rebuke you to the outer darkness in the name of Yahshua HaMashiach. They were gone. And when I said that, I looked into the other room, and all the rest of the demons were in the back corner, hunkered down like this. Because I'll tell you, it's one thing to be, when you talk about poltergeists, right? Is there any scriptural evidence for poltergeists? Oh, yeah. It's in the book of 2nd Esdras, chapter 7. Now, this passage was so terrifying, we couldn't find the passage for years when we initially published 2nd Esdras. And then we hear this rumor that the Codex Colbertinus had a copy of the 70 verses. I said, okay, so we read them. I'm like, well, that's one witness. That's not enough for me to publish. So somebody writes me 12 codexes that have these 70 verses. I said, well, 12 codexes, that's enough witness to be able to publish. Well, those 70 verses, man, this verse 35 to verse 105 in chapter 7 of 4th Esdras. You read those verses, and he tells you, he says, look, when people die, you all have the same experience for 1 week. You're awake, you're aware, you're conscious, you're on earth. And you're free to go anywhere you want on earth. But after 7 days, the righteous enter a profound sleep that the angels guard in profound silence. This is why the great sin of Samuel, the great sin of Shaul, to contact Samuel, to wake him in the grave. And this is what RIP stands for, rest in peace. But what about the unrighteous? Well, the unrighteous, according to these 70 verses, have their consciousness, and they see the righteous fall asleep. They don't get it. Now they have to walk the surface of the earth. And as they walk the surface of the earth, their consciousness gradually fades and fades and fades and fades. So poltergeist, you've ever been in a place that's trapped where poltergeist can't get out of the room? Everybody's cast him out for years and he can't leave it because he can't find the door. The consciousness has been very diminished. Right? Terrifying passage. And Ezra asked the angel, how do I know that I'm going to be one of those? Don't worry, Ezra. You're covered. You're covered. What about the rest of us? You covered? Those who are called by the name of Yahweh are. So tomorrow for your advanced read, later on, we'll go later on the second. We're going to take a look at we're going to revisit the name of God. And we're going to look at preliminary stuff of what happened to the tribes in the Northern Kingdom. So I'll see you guys after the break. Okay? Blessings.